Shows my videos off for some reason.
So yeah, I'm just gonna hit record and welcome Adamas Incendia to our live Zoom call. And yeah, I'll just introduce you, and you can sort of, introduce yourself a little bit more. I came across, I actually don't even remember, but I mean, here in Cape Town, sort of like everybody knows everyone.
Yeah.
And I've always known that Adamas was like the homeopath to go to. And as much as I was never really into homeopathy for many years, because it kind of seemed like, what's it going to do? It seemed too subtle. But eventually I heard about all these amazing, powerful homeopathic remedies that you were making. And so I thought, well, those sound really powerful and interesting. And I started playing with them and kind of really became sort of your beta tester for all those wonderful remedies. And they've all been absolutely life transforming in so many ways. And just even the fascination of feeling these remedies so powerfully in my body and what they would activate within me, that alone has obviously, transformed my whole belief system in terms of homeopathy and the power of homeopathy. Even though we have to say that your way of doing homeopathy is far more powerful than I think what most other people work with. But you can say something to that.
Yeah. Do you want me to say something to that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've been working for a while on making remedies stronger so they have a deeper acting effect on people, and also moving away from the traditional view of homeopathy where it's all based on curing disease.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of what I'm looking at here with these new sets of remedies is creating states in the body. I mean, there's no real word for liberation, like what it is as a remedy. It's a combination of remedies, but it's more like a piece of sculpture, an energetic sculpture than anything else. I mean, that's how I see it when I make it up. I'm constructing this from pieces to create this living fluid sculpture, which will go in and perform certain activities in the body. Now, I mean, it's very much a work in progress because it's such a huge thing. That's why I'm encouraging everyone to join the Liberation the Remedy Facebook group, just to add to the picture. When I look at this liberation, I kind of see like a giant painting, like a huge wall that we're all painting on. And as we paint on the wall, we all get images of how it can be used. I mean, everyone who tells me about what they get from it, I'm like, wow, that's another use for it. Well, I hadn't thought of working on it that way or using it that way. And that allows me to feed back to people how this can be used. So it's an ongoing thing. I mean, the really interesting, should I go into the remedy now? Or
yes, please, go ahead.
Well, possibly the most interesting piece in the remedy that's having this powerful karmic effect on people is this Navaratna. Now, Navaratna is made from Nava 9 Ratna gems. It's a formulation made by an enlightened Buddhist alchemist in the 3rd century. His name was Nagarjuna. He wrote the Madhyamika, which is the middle way. So he was a learned scholar in himself, but he was also an enlightened alchemist. And only in India would they burn 9 gems, each gem 100 times. So they spent each,
wow,
burn it, they burn it, and they burn it, and they burn it, and they burn it. And then I got this substance, which I then turned into a remedy. But then I found a way to amplify it even more, to deepen its effect, to make it even more powerful than it was before, to allow it to go sort of forward and back in time. And what surprised me most of all was that it started to deal with the what-if scenarios in our lives. So we'd go back to events in our lives where we had a traumatic event and there was a split and we went, say, the right path, but our mind was always, well, what would have happened if I'd gone on the left path? Where would I have gone? What would have occurred in my life? And often this stuff is unfinished, and it can't be finished because we never saw what happened. So it'll always remain this big question mark, this sort of chunk of memory sitting there frozen, as it were, unable to move forward until we take the remedy. I mean, I had a number of events where I took the remedy and I saw events play out in dreams, and I woke up and it was incredibly real. And sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad, sort of old relationships that went bad, you know, fears of the future, all sorts of stuff. And I played out, and then my body was able to let go of the memory by actually seeing what it felt like and feeling what it felt like, more to the point. It's like, so the body could actually feel what it felt like, and then it could let it go. It's like there was a poisoned arrow that got stuck into you, and then it got broken off. Now the arrowhead's still sitting there. But what this does, it sort of connects the arrow to the arrowhead, screws it back in, and allows it to come out. And part of the coming out is just allowing that thing to play out. So for example, in this one relationship, it was quite traumatic, but in the dream, it was like, oh, we were quite happy in the dream, but it never happened. But I almost then could put it down. It's like the snake eating its tail. I could move beyond that memory and say, okay, well, I felt what it would have felt like. It didn't happen, but my body can let go now. So this was very interesting, because normally when we think about karma, we think about what happened to me. But karma is equally about what didn't happen to you. And at every juncture, there's two or three or sometimes 5 things that could have happened and didn't. And the stronger the emotional charge around it, the bigger the memory there is there. So this is what the Navaratna does. It goes back into that. But this is not all it does. That's just the one thing that having amplified this remedy does. It changes it in a way that allows it to perform this almost like psychic surgery of the past, to actually go in and like unearth these things and allow the things to come to completion. What it also does, which is really interesting, is it kind of works back sequentially through all your old friendships, relationships, interactions, and repatterns them. You're allowed to go back to these events, look at the person, feel the emotions related to them, and then have a choice of leaving it behind. I mean, I had a very good example of that. I had a friend who was a very good friend, but then he treated me quite badly, and I always had a bit of resentment. Then he died, and so one couldn't really resolve it. But so whenever I used to think of him, I used to go into a slight state of irritation for about 10 or 15 seconds, and I'd dwell on it, and that might affect my day, it might not. But with this remedy, it just brought back 1 or 2 really beautiful memories of this person. And I was able to take that memory and put it in the place of those negative memories, so that whenever I went back to that event or that person, I would have the happy memory and I would move on. So instead of spending 10 seconds in irritation, I'd spend 1 second, I'd smile, and then I'd leave it and move on with my day. So this is a huge part of, what we're carrying. Now, there's 3 images. I just want to go into the 3 images.
I just want to quickly interject. I mean, I just want to sort of, put in there, I've been working, just with myself on all those points. And yes, I can definitely relate, having had those experiences of either reliving timelines and going into, the what ifs, and what if it would have gone that way, and then coming to a deep peaceful state, where I could actually finally fully drop into the present. Because that's always the thing. If we're not fully present in the now, and not just fully present, because oftentimes I find when people say, oh, you got to be in the now. Well, you can be in the now, but if parts of you that you're not even conscious of, if they're stuck in some other timeline, then you can be present on a superficial level, but parts of you won't be. And that will have an impact on your present and obviously on your future, because somehow there's a lot of energy that is not being here and now, and not being vested in kind of the future that you're building in your presence. And so as I experienced it for myself, I also started to work with my one-on-one clients. And so even though we were working on emotional, mental, and spiritual constructs one-on-one, by them taking the remedy on their own, then during the week they would have profound shifts that were just sort of really activated through the one-on-one work. So I found it's an incredible tool, especially for me when I work with people. I mean, most of my clients are overseas, and so it's such an amazing tool to work with people and to really give them amazing breakthroughs.
Totally, and I mean it's so important as well to, I mean, as one's cleansing the body, to cleanse the mind and the history. You know, this brings me to the second image I have. I mean, these images sort of came to me because as I was creating it, I was working with like what this did and how it kind of came into being. And what came to me was, at one stage I was just feeling completely overwhelmed. You know, a million things to do, and it's like, if only I had more juice or more energy, or my load was lighter. If I wouldn't have to carry so much stuff, I would have more energy. So the image that came to mind there was of a boat that was sitting in the water, deeply in the water, loaded with baggage and the mess of the past. And the waves were breaking over the bow, and I was like, getting wet and being thrown by the waves and whatnot. And then when I made this remedy, it was almost like I was just throwing the junk, all the old memories and junk and all the dysfunctional pain of the past overboard. And then it was like I was riding high on this wave, like a surfer rides a wave. I was riding on the wave. And it was like, it just gave me that extra ballast. So then I felt able to face every day, more than able. I felt like, wow, okay, I'm going into this day and I'm going to have a fantastic time. Why? Because I just will, because I'm feeling so great, because I'm not carrying the past. And
Wow.
People talk about the past a lot. And I mean, I used to talk about the past a lot from a conceptual level. But when I took this, I really saw how all of these things are really holding us there, even with the best intentions in the world. You know, we're still holding on to old memories of he done me wrong, or bad mother, bad father, you know, bad relationship, bad this, bad that.
Yeah.
You know, these things are memories that get stuck in the body, and they're literally stuck in the body. I mean, this is where your stuff is very amazing, Alex, because it actually goes into the physical cells of the body and like kind of cleans them out.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
what I do is like is where this memory is stored. Sometimes it's stored in, you know, a physical place. You know, sometimes I'll take some of the liberation. I'll have a little pain somewhere, and then a memory will flash. So it's almost like somewhere in the kneecap was stored that little bit of when I was 12 and I got bullied at school or whatever. Not necessarily, but it's like those things are stuck in the body. But the more ways we can find to clear the body as quickly as possible, the more we can really make radical progress with this. I mean, I'm just looking how this remedy is just exploding. I mean, people are just getting so excited about this. They're like, we're going to get some. You know, I'm like struggling to keep up with it. I'm making a nice label for you, Alex. The label will be here shortly. I'm on that. But just to come back to the third image, just to get an idea of how.
The third, because you touched upon, you know, where are these memories stored?
Yes.
And so what I'm seeing is that for myself and obviously for my clients, as we start cleaning out the body, the images, I mean, that's where when we drive fast, for example, a lot of emotions come up to be reviewed and to be expelled from the body, because essentially the toxic emotions or the negative emotions or the stagnant emotions are, you know, as within so without, they're stuck in the stagnant part of our beings, of our cellular beings. And the more that we clear out, the more that we flush out by eating a high fruit diet and by living a clean life, we're able to kind of transmute emotions, old emotions, far quicker, and new emotions as they arise, we just sort of move through them. But a lot of times, because, you know, obviously, like maybe we haven't, as most of us, we haven't cleansed in like 40 years, and now we're doing all the cleansing work, there is so much stagnation in our bodies that, you know, like you said, the more help we can get, the better, because then as we can move through things quicker, we can clean up quicker, we can shift quicker. And so it's the whole process sort of happens, you know, in many ways more elegantly and less painfully so. And so it's interesting that when you work with the remedy, yes, you can have potentially the same effect without using the remedy, but the remedy kind of makes it more poignant, and the remedy speeds up the process. That's what I'm finding.
You know, I would agree on most points. There's this what if scenario, which, you know, it's not even something that's stored. It's something that's frozen in a way. So
Yeah.
it's like, I wasn't even aware this could be dealt with. I hadn't even thought about it until I started taking this remedy and started dealing with these things. So I got very excited. It's like, oh, well, this is like a treasure, you know, I must share this with everyone. Is what I do. I find something good and I'm like, wow, amazing. So, you know, the third, I just want to come to the third image now because it kind of gives it a
Yes.
little bit more insight. Was, I mean, it was just an image that came to me of like these giant wings on my back that were coated with black, you know, like oil, old oil, you know, the old oil from cars. It was like that blackness on these giant wings. And like, as I was taking it, I could actually watch the black dust and the grime and whatnot falling off the wings. It was the most incredible image.
Yes.
It's like, but that's what it is. It's like, as we ditch this stuff of the past, then we can fly because we're not held back by anything. I mean, I've noticed my focus since taking all this liberation is like, it's crystal clear now. It's like I can bring everything to bear on a point. So as before, I maybe could bring 40% of my attention. Now I can bring like 80% of my attention to like focus really hard. So even like, you know, like learning languages or anything, it's like just that intense focus, which you can bring to any time because you're not having that 40, 50, 60% tied up in the he done me wrong stories or like what happened yesterday or like stories from childhood. You're not playing that anymore. So now you've got all this free energy. I mean, I saw you on the trampoline jumping around, like all this free energy, yeah?
Yes.
So it's like, and I've got this similar thing, but like more on a mental level. I've got so much to do. It's like but I've got so much capacity to do it as well. So it's like I can work throughout the day without getting tired, and I'm still completely focused. And I was like, how amazing is that? There's no sense of the mind getting exhausted because I've just freed up so much of the energy, which is basically our birthright.
Completely.
You know,
Yes, that is how it should be.
It's such a tough movie, this, you know, this whole human incarnation thing, and everything's sort of stacked against us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at what people are getting from your story, and it's like, it's amazing. And they also, this is another tool in that array to give people a fighting chance against the density of reality and everything we're assailed by, because and that is really why I made this remedy, because I thought I need some help. I need some energetic help now. I need to, as everything is increasing in intensity, I need something to lighten the load, to make me less bound.
Well, and something that is efficient, because, you know, also for me, I mean, I think my quest is always to find the easiest way to remove all obstruction, and the easiest way to basically, you know, step into my divinity. Like how do I become all that I know I can be, and yet how do I break through all the obstruction and all the conditioning and all the hurt and anger and all of that. And that's where I feel like, you know, your remedies have been an amazing step into that direction, an amazing help. And you know, as has been the Kundalini yoga, as has been this whole way of eating. So it's kind of like, wow, all of a sudden when you really go back to, you know, to reestablishing your foundation, because I think so much of the work that is out there is kind of like you're tweaking up here, but you're not changing your foundation, you know. And
Totally.
and that's why then people always do so much work, and it seems this never ending work. And like for beginners, it's like, oh my goodness, you know, do I need to spend 10 years going through all these courses, all these meditations, all these healers? And it's like, no, you don't. You know, if you come back right to basic and you strip it all down and you work there where it matters, then, and that's where I'm seeing people literally transform within 3 months. It's like, it's a new life. It's amazing.
Totally. I just want to go into two of the other ingredients,
Yes.
because they're quite pertinent to this. The one is, it was some ash I got from, it's called Panch Agni. Panch is fire, Agni is fire. It was made in India. There's some place in Bihar where there's four fires. The fifth fire is the sun. So it's like in the middle of a diamond with 4 fires that have been burning continuously for 50 years. Only in India they do this stuff. Yeah? But there's
Totally.
been someone continuously in the middle of these fires chanting the same mantra, and the mantra is all around
Amazing.
transformation and burning up of passions and like not being bound by jealousy and like a lot of that stuff. And when I took this Panchagni first time, I just felt all this heat, like it was just burning stuff in me. And I was like, and then I noticed there was less sort of the jealousy as it burnt that up. They say you can only sit in the middle of these fires if you're free from jealousy, but if you can take the ash, and then I made the ash into a strong version. I mean, what's so amazing is that the energy of the mantra and the ash translates into the remedy, that you can actually capture that.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that I put in is shungite. Now, shungite is a stone. It's a carbon silica conglomerate, which is used quite extensively in the purification of water. The Russian military has recently closed down the shungite mine. Not closed down, but taken it over because it gives electromagnetic protection. So they obviously wanted to shield their weapons. But you know, when the Russian military lock something down, it's probably good stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
They want to put their own personal things, but it's to give themselves shielding from the EMP. And when you look at it, I mean, I spoke to someone the other day, and they lived in a flat where everyone's got Wi-Fi. So the person in the flat is literally swimming in this Wi-Fi. And also, as we walk through the streets, if we could image this stuff, we would literally be in this giant like microwave all the time. And it's best not to dwell on these things, otherwise you go, it's slightly crazy. But
yeah,
you know, the nice thing about the shungite is it's known to give protection from that. People often wear like a shungite necklace. But for me, if you take it and you make it part of yourself, then you're kind of screening yourself from this huge electromagnetic onslaught we're faced every day. I mean, it's hard to really say, well, okay, I feel better or worse or more dead or more alive, but it's whether we like it or not, it's stuff beaming into our bodies all the time. So this is the other ingredient in there, is the shungite. The other reason I put it there was because blood is 90% water, and the shungite cleans water. If it cleans water, it's going to clean the blood as well. It flushes the impurities out. So it seemed like a really good thing to go in this mix. The last ingredient I just want to talk about briefly is the 5-MeO. We have it in our body, and it comes into us when we're born and when we die. It's sort of as we come in and as we exit. It's my experience of this substance is like you're being boiled clean in light. So you're like being boiled in light, and in that point, you know, whatever heavy processing you have to do or traumatic event like being born or dying is made easier. And I think that's the function of this particular substance. So I put it in there just to boil people a bit in the light of it, but also to facilitate this transition. Because, I mean, on a deeper level, when I look at this, I'm Buddhist, they have a very strong tradition of living and dying. And when they die, they continue to read the Tibetan Book of the Dead over the dead person for 40 days because they can see it. And it's all about liberating at this point.
Right.
And I mean, these are all the things they're liberating, but the ideal is to do that before you die, and then you just turn into light. So to clear all this stuff before you die, so you don't have this huge backlog of like 40, 50, 60, 80 years of life that you've got to process in, 10 seconds and you die. And that's why they say, whereas if you do it like this, you can sort of do it in bite-sized chunks and bit by bit. And every time you do it, you get lighter and lighter. People often someone said to me, like, can you get addicted to this stuff? I was like, it's like quite the opposite. In fact, the more you take, the less you need because there's less stuff to process. I still get a jolt from it. I've taken like about 5 bottles worth now, but there's definitely less. In the beginning, it was more demonstrable. There was more, intense stuff. I watched it work through all my relationships. It was crazy. I'd walk into supermarkets and it's like the Truman Show. People would just appear in that time to be in front of me so I could interact with them, to have a new interaction with them. They were like coming up to play out. I would see them and they would disappear. And then someone else I hadn't seen in 10 years would appear. And I was watching this whole thing, very aware that it was just my mind playing out all the bits so I could make peace with a lot of these things, with a lot of these people, or just let it go. Or just say, okay, well, do I want this person in my life or not? Here's the juncture. Let's taste them now for who they really are now and make a decision, yes or no. So it was like I mean, I'm most impressed by what I've created here. Some of it's accidental. I didn't have any idea it was going to do what it did. I kind of knew because all the bits I put together to do this, but it's gone way beyond my expectations, which is great. You always want that to happen. And then the base of this is royal jelly. I put a bit of San Pedro flour in because that's just the lightness, the playfulness. The light of Jupiter, which is all about expansion and openness with reality. And then Reishi, which kind of binds it all together. So, I mean, the base of it's really about feeling positive and confident and going out into reality. And then these other big boys are the real processing power behind it, to like actually dig into the matrix of the mind and the body and all the emotions and start to liberate it all. It's interesting that a lot of people, when they take this in conjunction with ceremonies or a spiritual practice, they find a much more powerful connection with their practice, whether it's Qigong or yoga. Or a good friend of mine in England did it. She put it in some of her ceremonial cacao, and she said it was like 10 times stronger than normal because people were in the cacao space, but they're having this incredible catharsis relief as a group. So everyone was going through this. So the sky's the limit with this stuff. I mean, where it can go, what it can do. People say, like, well, what else would you recommend? Well, I thought it was like, well, do this and then see what's left. But it's, once they've taken a bottle or two or even 3 bottles, they will not be the same person. Like, once they've gone through your process, they're not the same person. The stuff they've left behind is gone. And that energy that was being used for something else is now freely available for us to do whatever it is we like. I mean, this is possibly the importance of having practice to like ground it and focus that. It doesn't fall back into old patterns, but as we're feeling better, we can make the right choices and do things that are beneficial for us, eat better. And so it's kind of like a win-win situation.
Well, and that's where, I think, or not, I think so often, most of our blockages, really, all of them, are stuck in the way that we perceive the world. So, the trauma or whatever's been inflicted on us, the energy that we've been exposed to. Because oftentimes, it's kind of like, why does the same thing may happen to two different people, but the one person experiences it as traumatic, and it then has a ripple effect, a negative ripple effect on the rest of their lives, and somebody else experiences the same exact thing, the same exact energy, and they somehow don't take it as a negative, and they don't carry that negativity into their lives. And so I find that all of our traumas and stuckness really is a stuckness in perception. And once we release that perception, then all of a sudden we can rewrite our lives from a completely new perspective. And that's the power of your remedies and doing the work that is necessary to basically get rid of obstruction. And that's why it takes some massive action. I mean, also your remedy, it is massive action, because potentially somebody can take it and can go, because I've got one client, she's taking it at the moment, and she's releasing a lot, and she's crying a lot, and she's having a lot of, cathartic moments, but they're not exactly a walk in the park either. So you have to be willing to do what it takes so that you can shift through the stuff that is holding you back. But then the beauty is once you've shifted through it, liberation, that's liberation. Then all of a sudden you're free to really rewrite your life, and life becomes this new playground of infinite possibility.
Totally. I mean, in Ayurveda, they say the suppression of any of the discharges, and that includes the emotional discharges, will lead to disease. So if someone hasn't cried for the last 20 years when they should have been crying, there will be some crying, and that'll be useful. It'll be necessary, but it also opens them up to the possibility of allowing that to occur normally, for the tears to arrive in a normal situation. Like, okay, I'm sad now. Now, instead of burying it or putting on a brave face, I'm just going to cry, and then I'm going to get over it, or I'm angry with this person now, I'm going to shout at them, and then I'm going to get on with my day. I'm not going to suppress it. So it opens up the space for more healthy expressions of all of the emotions. And I think all of the emotions are there for a reason. I mean, some of them are demonized, like anger, but I find anger can be quite useful. Like when I get angry, stuff happens. I get stuff done, you know. And then, but the trick is not to get caught in it, not to be angry afterwards, to not be pissed off with the guy after the road rage, and like, you know, just to let it go. So, you know, this helps as well, because it almost slows things down. You're like, okay, am I going to choose to react this way or not? It gives us a bit of space. You know, what I often see is, like, I used to describe the human mind like a house. Now, if you went to someone's house, like the average person's house, and you went in, it would just be full of garbage in all the rooms, because they don't take the stuff out. They don't take the junk out. It's far easier in a sense to like cleanse yourself with fruit or do an enema than to face the reality that, like, oh, I might have stashed the stuff in my mind or my body, and like, where did I even put it? I don't even remember where I put it or why I put it or how I just pushed it down because that's what I did, because maybe my parents told me, or it wasn't acceptable, or, you know, I learned that pattern of behavior, or it wasn't safe to express it. But then to start to unpack that house and to sort of chuck out all the junk is, I mean, I find it a very beautiful process. It's like watching one's movie in reverse.
Absolutely.
Where you're the watcher. And that's why it's so totally personal. I mean, everyone says to me, like, what can I expect? It's like, well, tell me your story and I'll tell you what to expect. You know, that's what'll come back in reverse, because it's all about them. And it's, you know, some people experience this more on a kinesthetic level. You know, they have more physical sensations. Some it's more emotional. For me, it's quite mental, but there's still a lot of the emotional, but also the physicality of the memory. We often think of memory as being just mental, but, you know, there's a strong physical component in the cells. You know, like when we get rewarded for doing something good, you know, pat the child on the back. It's like, oh, well done. You know, that's locking in the memory, or the child gets hit. That memory gets frozen in the body. So until we're dealing with this and clearing this out, we're not really going to move forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the one dream, which was, I mean, this is an even weirder thing. It was like, I watched my daughter drown in a car, and I was just I was broken by it. And then when I woke up, I didn't realize she was fine. But in that moment when I watched her drown, I realized I could continue living. Before that, I was like, if she goes, I'm out of here, I'm not staying. But I realized I felt it. I could continue living. And then afterwards, I looked into myself for the fear of her dying, and that fear was gone because I'd almost experienced it. And this is why the Buddhists talk about, like, being reborn, because we've got to play out the karmas of this happening or that happening. But if we can play all these things out on the screen of our minds, then we have no need to take rebirth or return again, because we've played it, we've done it, we've ticked it. And
Absolutely.
then we can do whatever we like. I mean, who knows what we want to do? I mean, no one's to say what is
I
right.
actually had a very similar experience. I mean, for years and years and years, I had this fear that my son would die, and it was almost like a premonition. That's how it came to me. And then eventually, I can't remember if it was with this remedy or another remedy that you had given me. I have a feeling it was with liberation, actually. And I had the same, it wasn't a dream, but I sort of like really allowed my body to deeply go into the sensation of what would I feel, what would happen. So to really go through it. And once I allowed myself to go through it, it didn't come up again, and it was sort of like it was done. And actually I feel so much more free from that anxiety and fear, and I feel a lot more present with my children, because there isn't this kind of like, okay, let's not get too happy for their presence because they might be, you know, gone tomorrow.
Sure.
So I definitely experienced that.
It's a blessing. I mean, it's a gift. And I mean, it's never been a huge thing, but my thing was like, okay, I'm here, but if she goes, I'm also going. I'm not going to play if she's gone. But like then feeling it's like, well, I actually could continue, but then just looking in, it's like, oh, that fear is gone. I mean, that gift of the fears of the future, just that. I mean, wow. You know, because this is what binds us, the past and the future. And if we can free ourselves from both of those, then we can truly stand in the present, because then we are truly present.
Well, and I think so often we make up stuff. We make up fears. I mean, I've done so much of that. You know, at some point, like one movie that I was running was that I was gonna get sick, which I mean, I did get sick, and then poor young Alex would leave behind a young family that had so much potential, but she left early. And so I was running this movie, and the thing is, well, I had made it so real that I did become ill, and I had to watch how I wasn't participating fully in my life because I was running that movie that, well, I'm kind of going to go early anyway. And then I had that juncture to realize you can, like, there's nothing wrong with running that movie. You know, if that's your little fantasy that you're going to die early and you're going to leave your family behind, and you kind of like that whole image and fantasy because you're getting something out of it, cool, play it. But be aware that that's the movie you're playing. And so once I became aware, I was able to then choose and step into the full choosing of going like, no, fuck that. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to fully step into my life and start participating and seeing the perfection of everything that I've created. And that in this very moment, I can still create everything. Because so often we then think, so, okay, so I've created this shitty situation for myself. Well, fuck it. Now I'm just going to go and I'm going to kind of start again, you know? And no, you don't have to do that. You can, in every situation, no matter how terrible, no matter how tight it may seem, if you do what's required to break free from that perception, which is that prison of perception, it's like a total lockdown. All of a sudden, you take that thing out, and sort of everything starts opening up, and it's amazing what can happen out of nothing, literally within, you know, days' time.
Totally. You know, it's like I had a few people in England. I gave it to a chunk of people in England, and two of them actually had this dream that they were ripping chains out of their necks.
Wow.
They were actually ripping the chains out of their necks in the dream. So I was like, wow, that's a powerful image. That's not even symbolic. That's like literal. Okay, I'm unbinding myself from the chains that are stopping me being whoever it is I want to be. And it's like, I got very excited about that because, like, sure, how, you know, it's like when you put together many complex, powerful substances, deep acting substances that have been transmuted in a way that I've kind of discovered, you never quite know what's going to happen. But it's had such an overwhelming sort of success, and it's been so well received by so many people that I'm just astounded by what's being created here. And it's, you know, but for me, it came out of this feeling like, okay, well, now is the time. We're beset on all sides by an array of forces, whether it's, I mean, here we've got the drought, or there's this, or the economy, or this, or the weather, or, you know, everywhere there's stress. And it's like one either gets crushed by it, or like a diamond, one sort of, you know, condenses it and then rises up and then flies. But it's what's stopping us from flying, basically, is this memory of the past. And it's insidious. I mean, I deal with this extensively, you know, in myself, in my patients, you know, piece by piece. You know, often you'll find a remedy, you'll remove the remedy from the person. Whereas this is like the broom, the sweeps, the vacuum cleaner, all at once. It just goes in, it does it. It's like smart medicine. I don't have to do anything. I know the person's going to have a good response to it because they can't not. Because as stuff gets released, they become lighter, and then everything improves anyway. And it's, you know, I got to a point where it's like I was just throwing stones in the ocean. It's like it's endless disease with people. There's endless amounts, and you get a bit ahead. But with this, I really feel that it lightens the load. You know, it's lightening the field that everyone's in. You know, the more people that take it, the more people are less bound, the better society we create, the less we make decisions out of fear or doubt or hesitation. More like, well, I feel fantastic. I'm going to go out into the world and do whatever I feel like doing and make the world better because it makes me feel good to do that. And I mean, that is, if everyone's feeling like that on a cellular level, the world becomes a better place because people just won't take no for an answer. But if people are feeling crappy and messed up and burdened by the past, then it's hard to like put on the brave face every day and like go out into the world and make a difference. But if it's an effortless thing because you're just feeling so good, you just want to share it with everyone and make the world around you better, then there's no effort, there's no struggle. In that sense, I'm with you, Alex. I don't believe in unnecessary struggle or hardship either. It should be a pleasure. It should be a joy. It should be an ecstatic thing that we're living. But it's not, you know, because of all of the stuff, the bills, the this, the that, and all of those things just become stories. And after a while, it's like, okay, stop. I'm not going to stress about that. I'm going to relax. I'm going to take some more liberation. And then, okay, oh, all of a sudden this opens up, or that opens up. It's like, okay, what was that problem? Oh, I thought I had a problem. Well, I guess I was wrong. That was a funny thought. Good thing I have my dose this morning. You know, that kind of thing. And after a while, it almost becomes ingrained as that's the, I talk about DNA tattooing. I mean, it's a phrase I've coined. But it's like the more times we tell ourselves that that is the way it is, the more times that the cells go to that state as a default. And then it almost becomes automatic. It's like an automatic default of like, okay, well, everything's fine, everything's good, I feel great, what am I going to do today? Instead of like, oh, better run for the coffee, and then, oh, I hate my job, I hate my life. You know, all of that stuff. It's like, well, if I don't like it, I change it. And if I still don't like it, I change it again till I do like it.
Yes, and that's where, you know, I always say, like, you can choose your state. And I mean, for many years, I didn't know that we could choose our state. I thought, well, you know, I'm stuck in the state, and that it would take a lot of work. And look, it did take a lot of work. But now I realize it doesn't have to take a lot of work to change your state. And because the wonderful thing is that in today's world, and I think, I mean, we are living in one of the most exciting eras ever, because we have everything at our disposal, literally at our fingertips. And to me, the life or the era that we're living in now, it is paradise on earth. You know, in spite of all the shit, it's actually, we've got it all. We've got it all so easy. And all the knowledge is there, you know, like all the remedies that you've created, and especially liberation. Normally, you would not have had access to all those ingredients, because, you know, you would have had to travel to India to get all the stuff. And so only, or maybe even to find it. Now through the internet, you can have access to all these remedies. You can get them shipped right to your doorstep. You don't need to go on pilgrimages, and you can create it, you know, right here, right now, and then spread the medicine out. And so and it's the same thing with all the knowledge that I've acquired. I could not have possibly acquired all this knowledge in a lifetime, you know, 50, 60 years ago. It's been made possible through the power of the internet. And so we have actually all the tools. We can cure any disease, we can cure any state, anything can be transmuted. And not only, and then because people often, you know, all they want is like, they want to be healed, they want to feel great. But that is just the beginning of living, as I've discovered. You know, I thought, I just want to feel good. And then all of a sudden you feel good. And it's like, oh my goodness, now life really begins, because now you start stepping into your purpose. And as you say, once people feel good, automatically, inevitably, even without doing any further work, they are going to go and do other good, which is the exciting part. Because then it's like, well, how much good, how much bliss and magic can we make in this world when everybody, you know, or not everybody, but as more and more and more people sort of join the bliss party.
Totally. I mean, for me, it's just, you know, that thing, we only use 10% of our brain, or whatever that storyline is. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but, you know, my experience of taking liberation is, it's like that chunk of energy I can use to focus on things is, I now have at least 30 or 40% more than I had before. And I was a pretty sharp character before, but now it's like this diamond. But it's just like I can bring a lot of presence to stuff as well. I can bring a lot of whatever imagery is. Like, it allows me to be more poetic with my existence on every level, because it's like I'm not drawing boundaries in my reality. I'm like bringing it all to the party, because why wouldn't you? And like, what a pleasure to not have to like, I mean, I had a message from my father the other night, and normally him and I would just get into some conflict. I was like, I'm not playing that anymore. I was like, I just casual response to him. It's like, and in that moment, he almost wanted to fight. Oh, he did something wrong. I was like, no, I'm not playing. I'm just, and then I just ignore it. I don't even ignore it. I just give him a straight, clean answer, and then it goes away, because he's not getting what he wants. And like in that moment, the pattern gets repatterned of like, okay, we're not going to play the dysfunctional father-son movie anymore, because it's just not serving. It's like, I'm bored with it. I had this other friend of mine who, like, we had a very bad interaction, and then she was like angry with me, and I was like, I sent her something and she's still angry with me. And I was like, it was like she was this little pit bull in the thing. She was like, ah. And I was like, I was watching this. It's like, really? You're still there? And it's like, I actually gave her some liberation for that. I don't know if she'll take it, but it was so nice, because normally I would be the pit bull on the other side. I'd get involved in that and like, you know, I was like, I'm just not playing this. I've got far better things to do than to be that person. And I just didn't feel it emotionally. The charge around that was gone. I cleared it. Like, what a pleasure to be free of the almost like self-imposed chains of needing to respond in a negative or hectic or ugly or distorted way to people because you feel hurt. Like, to put that and just throw it out the window. It's like, how do I want to behave? The rat, you know, the bell rings, the rat looks at the bell, it's like, I'm not running through the maze, I'm not even hungry. In fact, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to play with my friends. You know, it's like, we break these chains of conditioning, and then we're truly free. And this is why I called it liberation, because it liberates us from ourselves primarily. That's the main liberation. You know, it's not, that's the fight. It's like, the fight's always internal, but when it doesn't become a fight, but like a washing from the inside out, a cleansing the dust or the murk from the wings, then it becomes very beautiful. And then the whole thing becomes very beautiful. And then where we go, even in the midst of this madness, we find ourselves, as you say, there's so much is available. I mean, humanity is kind of still on the knife edge of reality, but if every day we go out into the world and we live it to the best we can, then we live with no regrets. And then even if it ends, we're fine. You know, and what more can you really ask than that? I mean, there was that whole thing of, it was Thomas Jefferson, I'm not sure who it was, but it was like, even if the world would end tomorrow, I'd still plant a tree. You know? So even if the world was going to end tomorrow, I'm still going to go out and have a great time today, but do what I would normally do, which is no different from what I would normally do, because that's just what I'm feeling. But, you know, this capacity for work without effort that I've discovered from this, to like, because I can just bring this continual focus, and it's like a river that has no end. I can just continually focus on something. I mean, I'll work like 12 hours doing stuff and I'm still fine. Before, like after 6 hours, I'd be like, coffee, this. Now I'm like, okay, well, I'm still present. I'm still here. I'm not losing energy from any of these interactions, because I'm not dragging myself down. So actually the system is boundless and endless.
Which also kind of makes a point on, you know, because obviously with this whole mucusless diet system and removing obstruction, it's all about discovering that what feeds us is not food, but that what feeds us is actually prana. And when you start feeding yourself and prana can only ever, whatever feeds you can only ever be positive. Nothing negative, no matter how trivial or not it is. Anything negative basically takes life force away and will start bringing you down, spiraling you down. Whereas anything that feeds you and that is positive, but not positive as a judgment, just positive in energy, will uplift you and feed you really from the inside out. That is our nourishment. And as we get nourished from true energy, then endless possibility, endless life, longevity, and all of that becomes possible. And for me, that is ultimately, you know, the space that we want to step into, because that is where we become the embodiment of our highest potential. That's where we become God-like, and we experience ourselves as God-like. And when we start experiencing ourselves as that, and we tap into our unlimited potential and power, there again, the awe that comes out of that can only ever result in us going out and doing good for the greater good. Right?
Totally. Well, I mean, if all is self, then it's only yourself you're ever really playing with. If it's all part of your experience, then why would you not want to benefit it? You know, the whole immortality thing. I just saw a thing this morning on the immortal jellyfish, and at one stage I was keen on making an immortality formula. I might still do it. It's quite a challenging one. There's a plant that blooms once every 5,000 years, but this immortal jellyfish, the more you traumatize it, the more it regenerates. But then I was thinking, like, okay, well, to be immortal is one thing, but would you be able to stand yourself forever? I mean, do you not need a rest? You know, it's almost like if you didn't clear out the weight of the memory, would it not drag you down a bit? But with this, I feel that one could just keep going, because the natural state I would argue, is intensely creative and playful. And in that, we're just creating and playing with it just because one feels good and it's the thing to do. And it's, you know, I mean, I've taken a lot of remedies. I've spent a lot of time working on myself. And when I hit this liberation, I was like, wow, this has really amplified my own process. So I'm always very interested because there's Navaratna, which I've taken quite a lot of before, and now it's in the strong version. Like, people are coming to this fresh. You know, they've never had it before. So it's saying like, okay, let's clear out a whole chunk of memory very quickly. So I'm very interested in like what people are getting from this, because I mean, I came up with this formula as I was swimming in the pool one day. It's like, okay, swim, swim, swim. Oh, okay, what would this look like? And I came up with it. I made it that same day, and then I put it in my blog, Homeopathic Secrets, and someone came the same day to trial it. Yeah, and then they trialed it, and she got a lot from it. And then I continued to trial it, and I gave it to different people. And it's like, wow, this only positive comes from the substance. So as far as I'm concerned, this stuff should be spread to the four corners of the world, because it can only benefit people and make the world a better place. Not in a cheesy sort of way, but in a real-time experience of reality, where our interactions with others are not governed by sort of jealousy, hatred, fear, doubt, you know, all those sort of kind of cutting emotions that actually poison the whole movie. But if we're like a beacon of light that's just going out there, and the beacon of light is backed by a river of light or an ocean of light, then then we're just doing it. We're like kids, but we're full energy. We're doing what we want to do. We're just doing it for the playfulness of it. But, you know, it's intensely creative. That's what's amazed me, like how creative I've become from taking. Yeah, which is, I mean, wow.
And that's why I'm very careful with what substances I work with. I'm not really into supplements. I choose things very, very carefully. But that's why I'm working with liberation, and, you know, definitely with all my private clients and people that come to retreat, that's what they get in their little detox welcome pack. And so I'm very excited to be able to, you know, promote your work. Do you maybe want to also, and obviously we'll have a whole write-up on our website, so that's all coming, you know, about the work that you do and about liberation and how they can order it. Do you want to maybe also say something about the fact that you can make personalized remedies, and that you do sessions, and then I'll put a link on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll put, as far as I can type the link in here, I'll just add it to the group.
Yeah.
I mean, often it's useful to do individualized sessions as well, so we can target specific patterns in addition to this, because it just accelerates the process. Because we might need, I mean, I've got, say, 5,000 remedies in my back room. It used to be my daughter's nursery, now it's my medicine room. But I've got a lot of stuff, and each one is a frequency which we can potentially go into, you know, as a response or defense to being in the world. Now, I generally don't just give one remedy. I'll make up a little potion for people, a cocktail.
Right, as you've done with me several times, and I've always benefited hugely from them. I mean, that's pretty much all. If I work with something, that's what I work with. I don't take any other substances. It's that, and then my food in forms of fruit and greens, and I find I don't need anything else anymore.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting the door. Just a sec. Yeah, no, as I said, it just works even faster if people do the two together. I mean, it's saying that liberation is kind of designed as a standalone product, so people can get a lot from that. But I'm always, you know, the homeopathic ideal is rapid and gentle. So if we can possibly remove some of the traumatic patterning from childhood with specific remedies, and then the liberation comes in as the broom and the hose and the cleaner, then, I mean, we move faster through the whole thing. So maybe then there's less tears that need to be cried, or less, you know, kind of nights where one tosses and turns and sort of remembers the past. If we can actually flush those things deliberately with specific remedies, it works much faster. But as I said, it's at this stage, I'm just happy to spread the liberation around, because it is quite a complete product in itself. Not that anything is ever complete, but I'm just looking at how it's transforming You know, I'm testing another version of liberation with a friend of mine, and she's like, in effect, she's like, oh, I decided today I no longer want to be married to my husband. Would you consider that in effect? I was like, yeah, okay, cool. But it's been coming for a while. But it was like, yes, I would consider that in effect. But also people just getting to the point where, you know, certain things are untenable. It's not for their greater good. They're just living something that was a lie from the past.
Totally.
And it doesn't work anymore. And it's like, okay, time to move on. And that's fine too. You know, it's like, it's all about finding what works for us. There's no need to suffer the past. That's the real message of liberation. I mean, we all make good and bad choices, and there's consequences for both good and bad choices. So, but
and it's something that was appropriate, and I believe everything serves us, but it's really about becoming totally fluid, and you know, and becoming coming to live with radical honesty, even if it means burning the house down, and trusting that, well, you know, everything can be, I mean, we are creation itself. And when we tap into that, knowing beyond reason, when it's not just a thing that we say, but when it's something that we know on a cellular level that we are creation and infinite creation itself, then how can we live in fear? How can we live in restriction? How can we live in a diseased state? It's just completely unnatural. It's actually, it's not our real nature. And when we kind of click into that, then, you know, liberation on all levels happens, and then everything becomes love, because we realize there actually is no such thing as good or bad. You know, things begin and end, but there is no such thing as good and bad. It's simply, it's life, it's creation. Certainly. So I just want to thank you so much for all the work that you do, and I deeply honor your work that you do, because I know the level of dedication that you have. And yeah, and I'm excited to be working together and be able to, you know, put your product and your work out. And I look forward to more magic from you, because I know that you'll come up with more and more stuff.
I know, I've got a few things cooking in the lab at the moment, but they need testing.
I'll come and have a look.
Come and have a look. But thank you for inviting me on here, and thank you for introducing me to your group. They've been very enthusiastic with this.
Yes, no, they are. They are an amazing bunch on both sides. Thank you.
Any questions from people?
Yeah, any questions? Does anybody have some questions for Adamas? I think they're just all in awe, and they're like, okay, I need to order now.
Okay.
And I see heads saying, yes, Amrita, definitely, yes. Awesome. Yeah, all my love.
It's time for the end of suffering. It's like, we're bored of suffering now. It's time to
so boring. There's so much bliss to be embodied. Like that's, and that's work too. That's work too, because that's
totally.
Break through new layers. Thank you, Adam.
Okay, Alex.
Bye.
Bye-bye.